Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So just a little bit of ground rules for these Zoom calls that we do. We will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, either now or when the comptroller is speaking or during our board meeting, feel free to put it in the chat. Also feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you. And that type of thing. I'm happy to kind of make this interactive as it can be. We will have some opportunity. I'm going to turn it over to the comptroller here and you can kind of run with it a little bit, but we will have an opportunity to do question and answer afterwards. So either throughout the meeting, if you want to post it, I will ask them afterwards, or you can wait till the question and answer period is, either one is fine. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Jude Burke, who is our 2020 president, to formally introduce our guest speaker.
Thanks very much, Lori. Welcome everybody to our June Board of Directors meeting, our second one on Zoom, so hopefully we're getting used to this. We are greatly honored today to have Maryland Comptroller Peter Franchot with us. After 20 years in the House of Delegates, ran for Comptroller in 2006 and was inaugurated, I guess, in January 2007, has won re-election 3 more times since then, and has been the fiscal watchdog managing the finances of the state for 4 terms now. So, Comptroller Franchot, thanks very much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jude. Can everyone hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that nice introduction. Really, I'm delighted to be with your sector today because I'm very interested in what you're experiencing as far as the economic consequences of the pandemic. And specifically, I'm interested in costs of building supplies. Have they gone up? What you're predicting or sensing is going to happen as far as your own particular business of building new homes. Kind of feel like I'm sending a canary down into a mine shaft because trust me, the hospitality industry, for example, is not going to recover for 3 or 4 years, sadly. We have 700,000 unemployed Marylanders who have filed for first-time unemployment. It's just a staggering number over the last 9 to 10 weeks. We're predicting that the pandemic economic consequences are going to be long-lasting, generally for the hospitality industry and some of the other components of our economy. I have a kind of vague understanding that the housing market continues to be somewhat stable, at least, if not growing. I'm interested as to whether that's because of low interest or because of something you guys are doing that's special. I was delighted to see you were marked down as essential, an essential sector, so you didn't get shut down, or construction didn't get shut down. Anyway, I'm actually more interested in hearing from you guys in the front lines than I am necessarily in pontificating, but I will say that we have some very stormy weather ahead of us as far as a normally prosperous, economically sophisticated state. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to cut billions out of the state budget. Raising taxes is just an inconceivably bad idea right now or in the reasonable future. And we're going to see probably out of 140,000 small businesses in the state, we're going to lose about 30,000 of them permanently. Half of the 700,000 unemployed first-time filers, their jobs are never coming back. So it's a big, big challenge for the state of Maryland. I actually am optimistic that once we stabilize the situation and there's a medical solution to the pandemic, oh, and I forgot to mention, of course, in addition to all the economic consequences, we then had this situation in Minnesota where an African-American gentleman was murdered in live time on an 8-minute ghastly video sparking nationwide demonstrations all over the country. So if we don't have enough volatility for everybody, trust me, we do have enough volatility, and there are a lot of headwinds out there that we're heading into as far as the economy. Our best case scenarios, where we only have to cut $1 billion in real time spending out of the fiscal year that starts July 1st, best case scenario assumes that there's a vaccine in the fall, assumes that the federal government sends a big check to states like Maryland to fill their budget gaps, and particularly is based on the hope that there's no resurgence of the virus anywhere in Maryland requiring anything like the restrictions that were imposed. I think correctly by Governor Hogan. Democrat, he's a Republican, but I think he and his team have very competently and commendably told the truth to the citizens of the state, and I think they've done a reasonably good job. I had my disagreements about timing a little bit, but hats off to them. And but all of these big cuts in state spending are based upon everything else happening just right, and that's a big if. So let me just conclude by saying that I do think after 2 years we have a chance to reinvent the state of Maryland, get away from our reputation nationally as a high tax, high regulatory, difficult place to get a permit to do anything state, and recreate our image as a state that's friendly and welcoming, particularly to small businesses. Many of your companies are large, so you can kind of take care of yourselves. You've got reserves and capabilities, but I'm talking about the vast majority of small family-owned Main Street businesses in the state of Maryland that we rely on for a lot of employment, a lot of wages. I think we can make our state and market ourselves around the country as a state that has a reinvention of how we view fiscal issues and political issues. So I'd love to hear your thinking about that. My thinking, just very, very briefly, is that for the foreseeable future, we're not taking any money out of the pockets of Maryland families or Maryland businesses in new taxes. We just, really bad timing and unaffordable right now. Secondly, that we prioritize the permitting and regulation that a lot of small businesses, and I'm talking about 5 or 10 employees or less, they can no more get a permit to open up on Main Street for their business in a quick, efficient fashion. I know we like to say rhetorically, we're all for small businesses. Well, around the state, it's just, it's unbelievable the impediments we put up in front of these mom and pop businesses that we praise all the time. I would suggest our actions need to meet our rhetoric. And I'm thinking, I don't mean to excuse big companies. You guys, big companies can, in my opinion, more or less take care of themselves. If Walmart's going to build a 50,000 square foot parking lot and huge store, it seems like Maryland runs over itself trying to help them carve up a cornfield and put their store in. So I'm not talking about the big companies. I'm talking about the little mom and pop stores that are incredibly important to us. And I think they hear a lot of positive spin from politicians like me about how much we value them. And I think our actions fall very short. I've asked the governor to spend $500 million from the rainy day fund, because it's a very, very rainy day for the state of Maryland, this pandemic and economic consequences. But take that money and spend it immediately in a way that benefits small Main Street businesses. I'm not quite sure where that's going to go, because he, like everybody else, has got a multitude of people tugging at his sleeve, and he may want, I don't mean to speak for him, but there are a lot of people saying to him, you need to use the rainy day fund to plug gaps in the Maryland budget. No, we don't. We need to spend it on Main Street right now with these small businesses that many of them are never going to reopen if we don't get something in front of them. And I'm not talking about a grant program. I'm not talking about a low interest loan program where you have to fill out documents and try to reach somebody in government on an 800 number. Most small businesses can't do that. We need to take the 500 million and distribute it ourselves right now to the wonderful places all over the state. A lot of them restaurants and small stores that have laid off people and have basically made the decision or are going to make it very soon not to reopen. Long-winded way of saying I'm under the impression that you guys are doing, if not great, at least okay. Thank God for that. If you could fill me in on some of the details about, the supply side, distributions, building materials and all that stuff, I'd be grateful. And anything else anyone wants to say or ask questions of, I'm here.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, I just had a real quick question. How much is approximately in the rainy day fund?
Right now, it's 1.2 billion. The governor took 100 million or so out. We've already distributed that in low interest loans and grants to some small businesses, but it was oversubscribed within 48 hours of him doing it. So the need is out there. Yeah. And I'm not suggesting that it be spent in a wasteful way. I'm saying it's got to be spent in a way, get the checkbook out, walk up and down the streets, main streets of Maryland, and, make sure where 10 or 15 or $20,000 will mean they can reopen when they might not have beforehand. Let's see if we can't get that money in the right place. I declared a tax holiday back in March and said I didn't want any business or individual to send me taxes until July 15th. That was a 90-day forbearance. I had to wait for the IRS to kind of get synced up with us. The reason I like that kind of a relief program is that I don't have to tell people to apply for it. They just keep their own money in their pockets for 90 days, interest-free, no penalties, no additional interest costs added. And then hopefully they can pay their taxes, but also that money may have been useful to them as far as their families or their small businesses. I like that approach a lot. I like forbearance, frankly, a lot more than government grants, but the rainy day fund is there. There's a tornado on top of a hurricane, on top of a thunderstorm. It's raining cats and dogs, so let's spend it. And 500 million, I think, would be well advised given the prospects that lie before us.
Right. Well, I can say just from speaking to builders, and I would invite anybody on the call, please either raise your hand or put it in the chat. But I am hearing that things are going well in our industry. I think there is some supply chain issues, and like I said, I'd like somebody that has a little bit more knowledge to pipe up, please. But I do hear that things are going relatively well. We did have one question, which I think you sort of just addressed, but what ideas or help are you describing to provide top Main Street? Consumer and business confidence is at arguably an all-time low. You addressed that a little bit, but.
Well, I think we have a perception problem in the state of Maryland. We're viewed nationally as a very high tax, high regulatory state. Some of that's unfair, I think, as far as comparing apples to oranges with other states. But nonetheless, I think that the silver lining of this pandemic and the economic downturn because of it, and it is very severe. Let me restate that. When we're talking about We didn't have a 20% unemployment rate. We had a 13%. Maybe it should have been 16%. I mean, this is just 1930s time, not 2008, 2009. So God bless you guys for doing well. So we've got an emergency situation in my mind. And I think the opportunity that's there is to say to folks, from here on out, we're not going to go back to the old Maryland, where if you had a nice sounding program like Kerwin, and you had a lot of money, not your money, but other people's money attached to it, like $4 billion, therefore we're all going to vote for it because we like kids and we like education. And we're not really sure what the results are. We're telling you they're good results, but the last time we did this, the Thornton Commission, when I was in the legislature and I voted for it, it didn't get that good results. And it certainly wasn't paid for. So all I'm suggesting is that there's a fiscal moderation methodology out there that the state should, I think, maybe out of adversity, have to adopt. Do I think Maryland should just stop? No, I think they should mimic the innovativeness and entrepreneurship of the private sector, you guys, and the other sectors in the state. We should reimagine ourselves as a state that's willing to experiment, where we respect our voters and respond to our voters, get results for our voters. But most of all, we're not going to waste their money on programs that have nice names, but don't have a good track record. And I think you know some of the transportation, education, healthcare initiatives that we've entered into with the best of intentions, paid a god-awful amount of money for, and they just haven't delivered. And so I like the idea of, starting 100 experimental programs to improve each of those areas, for example, and then we'll measure them, see which one has good results, good return on investment, and we can scale that one up, and the others that don't work, cut off.
Yeah, we had a lot of concerns about Kerwin Commission, certainly. I did have another question, and I know you addressed unemployment, and I did see that the misreporting of some of those errors. What do you see as where unemployment is going? Do you think it'll level off and go down for a little bit, or do you see any kind of trends with that? And where do you expect that to go?
Well, Maryland's going to have a bump up in employment because of some technical factors next month. And so it's going to look like we're rebounding more than some other states. We didn't have as good employment news as other states in this recent announcement. But I just emphasize that half of the 700,000 people on unemployment right now that recently filed, the jobs just are not going to be there. They might be different jobs created out of all this telecommuting and teleworking. I often put working in quotation marks there because, we're all working at home, but it's not easy. There are a lot of, I can see reopening the schools in September, but I don't think we're going to see crowded school buses or crowded cafeterias or crowded auditoriums in our schools anymore until there's a vaccine that protects everybody, including the kids. Long-winded way of saying, I think there are a lot of people that are going to need to get some workforce training if they want to get back into the labor force.
I agree. And that's one of the things we're working on. We're working with the Department of Labor on a new apprenticeship program on carpenters, which our board will hear about shortly. Could
I ask, Lori, do you work with any of the building trade unions? I don't mean to bring up a radioactive subject, if that is one with you guys, but
I don't think it's radioactive, but we don't, not really.
Okay, well, I'll let it go then. But at some point, I'd love to talk to some of your leadership about vehicles we can use to give average Marylanders a path back to the middle class. And Obviously, a lot of the employees that you have get that opportunity, but we're talking hundreds of thousands of people in the state of Maryland right now that really are hanging on by their fingernails, and we got to get them on a path back to financial solvency.
Yeah, and we would love to. We've had those conversations internally with a lot of people that are that retail and restaurants and unemployed and probably going to be unemployed for quite some time. A trade is a great path for them. So if we can, any way we can work with the state to try to figure out how we can get those people in the right path, I think is the better for everybody. So.
Well, I've got about 35,000 candidates up in Baltimore City alone.
Oh, wow.
And, it's a lot of labor, but it's a question of getting from point A to point B is, well, it's something that's a challenge.
Yes. So I know that Jude Burke, our president, had his hand up. Jude, did you have some comments you wanted to make?
Thanks, Lori. Really appreciate your remarks, Comptroller Francho. So I'm going to bounce off a couple of those things, and then I'll try and get out of the way and let the rest of the folks who are on the call get their comments and questions in. You mentioned small businesses, and I just want to point out we've got about 1,040, 1,050 members, and we do have some large publicly traded companies among that membership, but the majority is small businesses started here in the state of Maryland. So you're talking about us when you say that, and we do appreciate that looking out for us that way. You mentioned trying to reinvent Maryland, and that's music to our ears, changing that reputation about being a high tax state and a high regulatory burden state. We really appreciate the forbearance on the taxes. Even though our businesses are generally doing well, especially compared to other industries, that's a big deal for everybody. And we are still seeing a decently strong housing market. Let's say moderate. I don't know if I want to say strong, but it's still going. And a lot of that goes back to that high regulatory burden and just the supply-demand imbalance, where for so many years, we haven't been building enough houses, enough apartments to meet the demand of the residents of the state. So we're catching up, and we're trying to catch up, but there's still a lot of folks out there trying to buy a house, and that's what's keeping the market strong. Low interest rates is a huge part of that, and we realize that's the hand of the government helping to tip that scale down and keep interest rates low for the buyers. We really appreciate that. And also very pleased to hear you say that you don't see any way to raise taxes in the next couple of years. Just another part of doing business in the state and selling and renting homes in the state, keeping them affordable. So really appreciate everything you said in that regard. And with that, I will turn over to the next commenter.
Great, thanks, Jude. Yeah, we are consistently, our biggest issues for our membership is the labor force, which we already talked about briefly, and then housing affordability. It's a huge issue for us. And obviously in the state, it's a huge issue across the state, is trying to keep things affordable. Supply is way down, which is obviously an issue to affordability. So those are some big issues that we face. So,
what's going on with the cost of building materials?
That is a very good question. Can anyone address that? Because I don't know that hands-on. Is anybody on that? Let me see if I can look through our list here and see. Mike.
I don't, Lori, I don't want to put someone on the spot. You guys can send me some stuff, but it's one, you've got the supply chain. Two, you've got the cost. And I'm just wondering what some of the trends are being, what's being set now for the immediate and moderately distant future as far as cost.
Yeah, I know that supply chain has been an issue. I also know that when Pennsylvania and it basically shut down all construction a couple of months ago. That became a huge issue for us because we get a lot of our materials from Pennsylvania. So I know that that was an issue, a short-term issue, but a pretty big issue as well. I don't know if, I know I see Mike Schuler on. I don't know if Mike can speak to that a little bit. And some of our other.
Lori, I can. So I don't think the cost is the huge issue. It's the availability. We're running into issues where, you know, our cabinets went from a 3-week to a 6-week lead time. For some reason now we can't find breakers for any of our panel boxes. HVAC, I just got an email of HVAC material shortages. So that's hurtful now because all those houses that are experiencing now will be our fourth quarter settlements. And, you know, everybody slowed down in the first quarter going into the second quarter. So there's going to be a gap for a lot of people in the fourth quarter based on your plan. So things seem to be okay right now, but fourth quarter will be a different story, I believe, for a lot of people.
If you could keep me in the loop on that, or my staff, I think Tom Brennan from my staff is hopefully on this call. Well, let me, if I could, Lori, just give my cell phone number to your membership or members. Yeah. Reason I give it out is not because I like to have a lot of phone calls. I just want to have a statewide elected official in Maryland available if someone has something important to say, I guess. And I probably will not answer the number if you call, if I don't recognize it, but you can leave a message or you can text me, and someone like Tom Brennan or someone else on my staff will be assigned to help you out. My cell is 301 area code 332-1961. Don't be upset if I don't answer, because, you know, I get a lot of calls from Nigeria and other places trying to sell me things, so or ask me to send money to them. And you know, I'm trying to be somewhat lighthearted there, but I get a lot of phone calls. But if there's something that you think is important that I should pay attention to, obviously I'm on the Board of Public Works, which votes on all of the major expenditures. I'm not the governor, obviously. I'm not the legislative leaders, but I do have a bully pulpit and would like to be kept in the loop as far as issues that you think are important.
That's great. Yeah, I did have somebody in the comment section say a drop in oil costs have helped, but other raw materials have significantly increased in price over the last year or so. So I'd anticipate if, of course, if the oil prices go up, that will create more issues moving forward. So
yeah, I don't think, I can see that, but a little bit of a heads up for us really helps.
And then I had another person asked, just curious if the state revenue from taxes is going to drive a huge deficit that would eat into that $11.2 billion rainy day fund with the delayed filing. Is that going to be an issue?
It's 1.2 billion. It's not 11, 1.2 billion. And no, we're a very rich, prosperous, wealthy state with enormous reserves and great liquidity. I'm embarrassed as the comptroller to say I didn't quite realize the extent of it until we looked into it when we were talking about the tax forbearance and being able to pay the state's bills. We have plenty of cash available to allow us as a state to ride through this. It's not without limits. It does have limits, but we conceivably could do some form of forbearance come July 15th if we think that that is appropriate for the state of the Maryland economy.
Yeah, absolutely. I had somebody else post that random length lumber composite price index, so basically lumber, went from $320 in 2019 to $441 last month.
Well, that's an interesting data point. And I'd like to pass that along to our economists because they're very, they're very skittish right now with the revenue predictions. They're not scared necessarily for the state of Maryland because we're going to be okay. I believe, because we've got good fiscal leadership right now. So we're not really at risk, but they are quite concerned about the overall situation in the country.
Yeah, and I can send you that. That data was from NAHB, our National Association, so we can send you some more information.
Great.
Certainly. And then I had somebody else ask if you could help us understand what impacts the timing of a vaccine has on the economy.
Yes, I happen to think that the medical solution is very important, either some kind of effective therapy or some kind of a vaccine, simply because it's somewhat of a mystery how this virus interacts with the human body, and it can, not for a huge number of people, thankfully, but for a nonetheless significant group of people, it is a horrible disease. So I think getting people to feel comfortable with their normal routines in the old economy, that's going to depend upon a medical solution. I think I'm just speculating from myself that, I have new grandkids that have come in I haven't seen. I'm not even sure about traveling in a plane, what that is all about. And I keep reading that there are little sudden effects of the virus that people were not completely anticipating. So I don't mean to be doom and gloom. I just don't want to sugarcoat things and say, hey, Ocean City's opening up so we can go back to, breaking open the champagne. No, we can't. It's just it depends upon the scientific community coming up with something, and the private sector, since they're going to be in charge of production and distribution. But I think you just got to get something like that available to get back to our normal vitality.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to just bring up two more points. Just I'd be remiss if I didn't bring them up while we're on the phone. I wanted to make sure that you're aware of some efforts that we've been making through this whole thing to make sure that our industry is safe. Because obviously we were extremely happy to be, an essential service. We worked hard with the administration to try to make sure that happened. But we also were very, very clear to our membership. They need to do it in a safely way. We put together many different videos and different resources for our members to make sure they were safe, and conducting things through all the guidelines and making sure we gave out guidance whenever there was new guidance, that type of thing. So we did take that pretty seriously and we continue to do so. I've been in constant contact with the Office of Law to make sure we are interpreting everything correctly. So we have been very cautious and want to make sure we're not taking advantage of that status for sure.
Could I interrupt, Lori, and ask a question there? Because I'm interested in your sector's experience, because we're bringing our 1,150 employees back. Most of them have been teleworking. What video worked generally for your sector as far as educating people about common sense protections they could use?
Yeah, so we did a safety stand down. We did a one-day safety stand down. It was actually a national effort, and we participated on the state level. And it was just a safety stand down. We did a quick 10-minute safety, and we had one of our members record it in Spanish and English, and obviously it's a little bit different than an office environment, construction sites. So we kind of conducted our own quick 10-minute safety stand down, and we made sure everybody participated in it. So we did videos on that type of thing, on specific to construction sites.
Great. If you could pass along something that seemed to be well received. I've been thinking about that a lot with my own employees, who obviously you just have to nudge people, I think, in the right direction to use common sense and be responsible.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and then one other challenge that we have as an association is, and somebody just put this in the chat as well, so thank you, Jeremy, but this, I'll kind of quote this as a member. Despite our organization having a lot of success with both national and state issues, our biggest obstacle right now is local issues, and there's just quite honestly, a very hostile environment in many of our jurisdictions towards building, especially residential. And it's a huge challenge for us, especially when I believe personally that we can help get us out of this recession, because there is the need for housing, and just the fact that there's such a negative view on it out in that world is troubling for us, and it hurts us, quite honestly, and it hurts the economy when we can't continue to build, even though we're an area that is needed. So.
Well, yeah, but that's the old Maryland. Now we're going to have a new Maryland. And seriously, it's going to be an interesting journey, but I think that there's some positives there. I'd love to work with you on correcting some of the problems that you just talked about, because it's not going to be a voluntary, discretionary issue. We have to change because, and I hope that we do it in a good way. I do not like to emulate states that just put their head in the sand and never regulate and never give any kind of constructive partnerships and help to the private sector. Government's got a role to play still, but it's got to be a new definition of the relationship. And so to the extent we can work together on that, we've got a couple of years, I think, but I don't think we're ever going back to, or hopefully we're never going back to what you just described.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge challenge, and you're right, it is a new world. And I have been, any conversations I have with any elected officials, I'm very clear that we need to, we can be part of the solution. We just have to work together to do it. But I do believe that we can help get us out of this situation in a productive way. I did have a couple more quick questions that a couple people have asked. Somebody asked how the state government can possibly change the regulatory structure on a local level. I think that's coming from what we were just talking about. What can we do because we do, I think, have a lot of people at the state level understand where we're coming from, but the local level is just a much different world.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned the difference in difficulty in people getting a simple permit to renovate a building on Main Street to put a small business into. I wasn't really referring to new construction like you guys are involved in, but I just cannot emphasize enough how loud the rhetoric is about small businesses and how we need them in Maryland, and how many impediments are put in front of them. I mean, these are tiny businesses compared to a lot of your operations, I think. And it's just mind-boggling. So it needs to have a generic bully pulpit pointed at it. And I think rather than having something that's tremendously controversial and combative, this can be done naturally because of the downturn that we're going to see in employment and some of our revenues. I think people are going to understand that we need to create a state that is, particularly as far as small businesses, much more where our actions match our rhetoric. That's what I'm looking for. And I think that's possible. I happen to be someone that believes, I mentioned the word nudging. I think most people in Maryland want to do the right thing. Sometimes we just have to nudge people into a different point of view. And I think we can do that down the road here. Can't be done immediately because we're dealing with some real crisis situations. And so anyway, I look forward to partnering with you guys. I don't mean to pontificate and go on, but I am grateful for the economic activity that each of you represent. I don't mean to classify all of you as big businesses, but you're successful businesses. And I personally am very grateful that you're here in Maryland. I will just end on a note that a lot of people are talking, because I said I was going to run for governor and give up my comptroller seat. If I do, I can pretty much guarantee you that if you are retiring in the state of Maryland, you're going to want to stay here. You're not going to want to move out. That is I'm not sure about all the components of that, but I'm tired of having our state seen as a conduit for Florida and other places. Most hurtful of all, Delaware. I want our folks to stay right where they have had their businesses and brought their families up. So that on that final note, I am going to sign off and thank you, Lori. Thank you, Jude, for that great introduction.
We'll definitely be in touch with them to follow up, and we'll keep you posted on what we're working on.
Yeah, and if anybody who has something that we really need to pay attention to, just give it to Lori. If for some reason there's a glitch with my phone, Tom Brennan is available, Lori, to be your conduit to immediately get something to us. And we look forward to being of service to folks. We are not the IRS. Trust me, if you ever even get the scent of the IRS breathing down your neck from the Maryland Comptroller's office, call me. It's not to say we're not the tax collector, we are, but we are not going to get blood from a stone.
Well, we appreciate that. We do appreciate that. Well, thank you so much. Jude, did you have any final remarks?
No, thanks very much. We really appreciate your time today, and look forward to working with you.
All the best. Have a great rest of the meeting.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, we'll go ahead and switch over. Just give us 1 second. We're going to switch over to our board meeting. Okay, Jude?
Good to go. All right. The June 11th, 2020 Board of Directors meeting is hereby called to order. And first order of business, the 8 minutes with McCann.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting. Or I'd like to ask for a motion, excuse me.
A little hard with everybody on mute.
Second that.
Somebody besides me.
Second the motion.
Yep, go ahead. We got it. We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I'm going to assume everybody's in favor. If you are opposed, put a remark in or raise your hand. But otherwise, we are going to proceed on with the rest of the meeting. Obviously, we are at least 3 months into a very tricky situation. As I mentioned, talking with the comptroller there, our industry is doing a lot better than most, but still everybody's got to be careful. And as an association, we have to be careful. We have furloughed a few people. Lori's doing a very careful job of minding our finances. We really appreciate your membership, appreciate any new members you can bring in. I know there's some companies out there, I want to call out Stanley Martin. I don't know if anybody from Stanley Martin's online, but they paid their dues check a couple months early, extremely helpful last month. And also Stars Club's members, I believe we're going to have those start rolling down the screen. But all that, these companies who are keeping us afloat right now are very important, but we still need to keep recruiting and try and keep retention. We know we're losing folks, but whatever we can do to keep people on board, because Lori and the staff are still doing a tremendous job. We still every day we're dealing with routine local, well, they unfortunately are routine local issues just to keep us in business, just to keep us building houses that have nothing to do with the pandemic. And at the same time, they're managing relationships with the state and the county about keeping us open for business, keeping inspections going, plan reviews going, and our staff's doing a great job of that. So really appreciate that. That's all I have. We're going to move on to financials now. I think Rob Case, if he's on, he's driving. So Lori is going to talk us through the financials. I'm sorry. We're going to first, before financials, we're going to talk about the apprenticeship program that Lori mentioned. Chris McLaren with the Department of Labor, but first, Paula Baller, I think, is going to introduce him with a few remarks.
Hi, I'm very excited representing the Remodeler and Custom Builder Council to tell everyone that we've been working since December to get a carpenter's apprenticeship program up and running, and we are now officially sanctioned by the state of Maryland DLR. So Chris is here to talk to you about that process. He has also most recently encouraged us to apply for a $250,000 grant to scale our program from what we thought would be a very modest group up to 100 apprentices over the next 2 years. So I'm going to turn this over to Chris and let him give an overview and then answer any questions that you have.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Paula. My name is Chris McLaren. I'm the director of the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Program. That is with the Maryland Department of Labor. Specifically, I work with the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning. And I will pause there just real quick. I just want to make sure that I'm actually unmuted and you can hear me.
We can hear you. You're good.
All right, perfect. I know this has been a little bit of a challenge switching over from in-person meetings to online, so thanks for that. So I also want to thank the board for all of you for having me on today, in particular Lori, Carrie, Paula, and for all the employers who they provided a lot of input and work on the new MBIA Registered Apprenticeship Program, and specifically for the vision you guys have towards workforce development. And if you're still on the line, I do want to acknowledge our comptroller. Mr. Comptroller, it's a pleasure to be on a call with you today as well. I want to start by saying that Governor Hogan and the entire state of Maryland are huge supporters of registered apprenticeship. And over the last few years, apprenticeship numbers in Maryland from 2016 till now have grown by 40%. We have about 11,000 registered apprenticeships and apprentices in the state of Maryland. It's an all-time high record. And we're adding new occupations and new industries literally every month. We do view registered apprenticeship as one of the premier ways that a workforce can educate and train its members, its employees. And it's a combination of paid on-the-job training as well as education for your apprentices. I want to talk a little bit about the MBIA residential carpentry apprenticeship in particular. This is the first one in Maryland that specifically targets the residential industry. Numerous apprenticeships exist within the skilled trades, and I'm sure everybody on this phone call is very familiar with carpentry apprenticeships and electrical apprenticeships and HVAC and plumbing apprenticeships, but they very often focus on heavy industries, hospitals, schools, new development of government buildings, and things like that. Very commonly referred to as apprenticeships that deal with scale and prevailing wage and Davis-Bacon work. This is one of the first, actually this is the first in the state that will target the residential industry, and it's been long overdue. What we find is that job seekers, teachers, parents, high school students, they don't realize that there is an occupational world for residential construction. Somebody before me mentioned, building new homes and renovating homes. It's an entire world of an occupation where you can have a career that's just as lucrative. But quite often, in the high school world, they don't know that. So we have occupations and we have programs that are manufacturing, IT, healthcare, and your structure of the program you've built within the residential carpentry apprenticeship is very similar. Apprentices will be hired at a lower but a progressive wage rate as they work towards learning all the skills to become a highly skilled carpenter journey worker. Over 3 years, they'll accumulate 6,000 hours of on-the-job training with 144 hours of education each year through Penn Foster. And as we recover from COVID-19 and all the restrictions that were in place and the impact that it's done to us, we really do think there's no better time to prepare and educate and train your workforce than through an apprenticeship. The U.S. Department of Labor, which supports us extensively, recently put out a survey and it shows that 95% of all apprentices are still with the same employer a year after they've completed their apprenticeship. And they have a return on investment report, which shows that for every dollar an employer spends on an apprenticeship, $1.47 is returned. I also want to mention that Maryland has several opportunities that employers of your association can participate in, which will help offset the cost of education and training of an apprentice. The first one, we'll just go over it real briefly in the interest of time, is the Maryland Business Works. This is a grant program for employers in Maryland with 500 employees or less. You apply for a grant 30 days before your training is to begin, and when we approve your application, we'll reimburse up to 50% of the educational cost for your apprentice once the training is complete. You can utilize this program year after year. There's no limit on how many years in a row you can participate. The only limits is that it's a cap of $4,500 of reimbursement per apprentice, and that's per year, and $40,000 per business per year. I will say too, you probably have journey workers, you have other workers in your company that are not apprentices. This program can help them as well if you invest in your workforce and you're offering other kinds of training. So don't hesitate to ask more about that. Second, Paula mentioned the Apprenticeship Innovation Fund grant that I've encouraged you guys to apply for. To me, that's a great opportunity. This is one of the series of grants the state of Maryland has been awarded by the Federal Department of Labor. We've received somewhere around $7 million in grants in the last 4 years to help scale apprenticeship. This grant in particular will allow associations, nonprofits, colleges, existing apprenticeship sponsors like the MBIA to apply for up to $250,000 to help scale an apprenticeship program. You can use the funds from the grant for a variety of resources to include paying for the education of 100 apprentices to alleviate that cost off of your employers. You can supply supportive services like tools, uniforms, and boots to an apprentice themselves. You can also pay for costs associated with the staffing of an apprenticeship program. The speaker before me mentioned that you've had some furloughs within the MBIA. So for example, the grant could offset the cost of somebody who's acting as an apprenticeship manager for the association or an apprenticeship director. The idea is that a person in this capacity will assist employers with all their apprenticeship needs, and some examples of things that a director could do is help to recruit new apprentices, help to register new apprentices. They can collect all the documentation for an apprentice, like the school and the on-the-job training documents. They could also work to recruit new company members to the association. So you could go out and recruit new companies for the MBIA with the idea that the value add of having an apprenticeship program helps to justify the cost of membership every year as you invest in the workforce. This person could also be the liaison with the Maryland Department of Labor, so they would be my counterpart, so that the employers could concentrate on just running their business and training their apprentices versus dealing with the Department of Labor for monitoring needs. They could also conduct hiring and job fairs, so they could do recruitment for their employers, helping to alleviate, what can often be a costly proposition as employers have to go out and recruit new apprentices or new employees. The association could do that through a director. Also, they could work directly with local high schools to promote both the MBIA apprenticeship as well as your industry as a whole, and build a robust and diverse apprenticeship committee, similar to what I hear on the phone today. If this format sounds familiar, this is a format that numerous construction apprenticeship programs around the state use. You might be familiar with the Associated Builders and Contractors or the Independent Electrical Contractors. Those are two examples of large apprenticeship programs that operate in a similar structure. So I know there's a lot of information there. I also know that this call is running a little bit late, so I'll slow up here and pause in case there's questions. But I do want to add that I really believe that residential construction programs for the skilled trades are long overdue. It's been neglected. This is a great opportunity to have a structured training program for an industry that is growing, and it is a backbone of Maryland as well as, in my opinion, most of the country. And it's just been neglected. And I'm really excited the possibility to one day meet all of you in person versus just on a phone call. And I'm really looking forward to working with you. And I'll turn it over to Lori, Carrie, or Paul, or whoever's running the call today.
Great, thanks. First of all, does anybody have any questions? We're really, really excited about this, and we hope that we can expand it even further at some point in the future. But I also wanted to point out that we are doing a webinar on this on June 29th at 10 a.m. if anybody's interested. Chris will be participating in that, as well as Drew Furman, who's with Penn Foster, which is our education partner, as well as Joe Smith from Owings Brothers, who's already signed up to participate, and Paula is going to be our moderator. So if you want more information, please feel free to sign up for that webinar, or obviously you can email myself or Carrie or anybody on our team, and we can get you some more information. Anybody have any questions or anything? Great. I'll turn back to Jude.
Thanks, Lori. And I just want to, again, say thanks to Paula for spearheading that effort. I know that's been a huge amount of work, and really appreciate that you took that on for the association. And again, thank you to TW Perry for being a Stars Club member. On to financials, and this is going to be back to Lori.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Rob apologized. He was not able to join today. So for our financial situation, we posted on the website, which I believe was in the chat, the financials through April. I'm almost finished finalizing May, but our biggest focus right now obviously isn't so much where we are related to budget or our profit and loss statement. Our biggest focus is cash. I have been doing a pretty much daily cash analysis on where we are. Cash is just king right now, and that's where really where we're focusing. Not being able to have any of our events has significantly hamstrung us as far as cash, but we've been trying to keep a really close eye on where we are and what we need to do moving forward. If you look at our balance sheet, you can see that I think Chris, can you pull that up? There we go. You can go to balance sheet, which is a different sheet. So the biggest thing is where we are with total cash. This includes all of our reserves. As of April 30th, we were at 584,000, which was down about 35,000 from where we ended March. The good news is that the balance sheet at the end of May will have us back up in around 600, 610. Again, I'm finalizing that as we speak. So that's the biggest thing right there. Not having to go into our reserves for a significant portion. The other thing to kind of point out, if you go down the balance sheet, you can see our payables, our accounts payables is about 131. We have deferred some payments. We've deferred our NAHB payments as allowed by NAHB. They've allowed us to defer 3 months worth of our membership dues to them. We've also been able to defer some of our Social Security taxes for the year, which is about $4,000 a month. So those are all deferrals. Obviously, we still have to pay them. We've also have deferred some of our rent as well. So we're working on with all of our other partners on that to try to figure out when we can pay. We also have some other vendors that we have been kind of working with to try to limit our liability with them. So we're working on that. You can also see if you go further down, our deferred income line items, we have changed, if you recall, we have changed how we are reporting our membership dues. We're doing more of an accrual method. We have been doing a cash method. I will say this was a challenging time to try to switch over to that, but I think we finally figured out a system to do it. So you can kind of see where we are with that. And you can see Builder Mart. This is the big conversation that we have to have at some point, is how we handle Builder Mart. But we have 274,000, about 190,000 of that is money that we have collected. The rest of it is receivable, so not money that's in the door. So that's something that we have to keep an eye on as we move forward, is that we have received cash of 190,000 for Builder Mart. So that's kind of where we are. I'm happy to answer any questions. Obviously, we have the income statement as well. Again, we're a lot less focused on where we are with budget and that type of thing than we are just trying to cut expenses. I've been in negotiations with many of our vendors, our copier vendor and all those types of things, to try to either defer those or cut them down in any way possible. So we've been really working on that. Our staff has been working remotely. We'll start cycling people in next week and opening up somewhat. But we're really in a holding pattern as far as our events go, and I'll talk more about that in my report. Does anybody have any questions for me regarding the financials? Yeah.
Thanks, Lori. The next item is membership with Cindy Plackmeyer.
Hi, everybody. I think what we're going to try to do, which was a little difficult earlier, is try to get an approval of our new members. So if, can I get a motion from someone to approve these new members, please?
Motion to approve.
And a second, please.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yay, that wasn't so bad. And anyone against all of our new members? No. Okay, great. I'm going to hand over the report to Chris because he did all the work on this and he can speak fluidly about all of it.
Thank you, Cindy. I know we've got a pretty packed meeting and it's already been quite a while, so I'll try to go through it very quickly. As you can see, as of today, our membership is at 1,021. The last meeting in April, we were at 1,035. So I'll show you in a little bit why we are there and especially what we've been experiencing in May and early part of June. Retention currently we're at 76.8, a little bit ahead of the national average, but we were about 3 or 4% ahead of national. We're now pretty much closing to be in line with the national average. So, and again, we'll go into that. I won't spend much time on here. This is all available on the website. Everyone should have access to the membership resources page online. So this entire PowerPoint's on there as well as the membership reports, but please take a look at that after the meeting. So we've been kind of going through some of the strategic plan bullets. I'll continue doing that even though we know this year is kind of up in the air as to where we'll go and where we'll finish at the end of the year. So the first goal was that board of directors participation. And for those of you that are new to the meeting today, this was all done back in January at our leadership retreat. So all of these goals were set by the board of directors then, and we're monitoring them throughout the year. So the first goal was to have 100% participation from our board of directors. At the last meeting, we did get a few new signups. So we're up to 30 board members signed up. 13 have yet to make the commitment, and I'll briefly show this with a few shout outs. Cindy Plackmeyer continuing to lead the way with 3 new members. Hillary Colt with 2, Steve Appler with 2, which is new from the last board meeting. So a big, huge thank you to Steve, as well as Larry Kafritz with a new member from the Custom Builder Awards. Paula and Jeremy Rudder also both are working with companies that we're pretty sure are going to be joining here any minute. So they should be getting on the board. All of the rest have yet to bring in a new member. Those of you that are in red have yet to make the commitment. So please, and I'll just go back for 1 second. The commitment again was either to recruit 2 new members for the year, participate in one of the membership drives, or submit your target vendor list. So if you get a chance, put your name in the chat box, shoot me an email, send me an email, we'll get you signed up. But I also wanted to send a special thank you to the executive committee who have been not just focused on bringing in new members, but have really been making some phone calls and trying to get some of the past due members to pay. So even though they don't get the glory of getting a point for a new member, getting a past due member to pay is a big deal for the association. So thank you to the executive. The next goal was the retention. So there was 2 parts to this. One was to increase our membership retention, and then we had a focus on new member retention. So the retention rate was 77.8 back in January. Our goal was to increase it to 82. The new member retention was to bring that up to 65. And so we started last meeting reporting monthly, which is much more accurate than how we did it before. And I'll show you just January through April, we were doing really, really well. You can see January, we were 88%, February 81 roughly, March 80, and April right around the 82. So overall for January through April, 82.4, which actually would be passing our goal, which is fantastic. Now we come to May and it's a whole different story. So May is where we've really been struggling. So we had 105 members that their renewals are due every May. Thus far, 53 have paid. So we've got 52, I think that leaves, if my math is correct, members that have yet to pay and are now considered past due for May. So any company you see on this list, again, it's on the website, so take a look at it afterward. Some of them have already termed, but those that haven't, if you know anyone there, please reach out, give them a phone call, shoot them an email, ask them to renew. Some of them are pretty well-known companies, so it shouldn't be too hard. It just may be a matter of timing and that sort of thing. But we have noticed some companies terminating based on COVID-19 and the financial struggles. Some don't want to terminate. They want to just kind of hold off on payment for a little while. So we've been trying to work with members, but we understand it's difficult for everyone. So hopefully we'll catch back up in the fall. But you can look real quickly at June and July. Again, we're not quite there yet, so they're not past due, but 20% of renewals have paid for June and 18.4% for July. New members, again, this is going to be really, really difficult this year because they were new last year. Some of them may have joined late last year, and then the wheels fell off of the country at the beginning of this year. So it's been hard to prove membership to them. So January, February, March, not so good. 50% January, none of them in February, 5 members of 13 in March. April, you can see May, June, and July. So overall, we're at 38%. Again, that goal was 65%, so we've got some work to do if we want to get anywhere close to that. So I'll move on. Next Tuesday, I wanted to mention, we have a membership committee. It's Tuesday, the 16th at 9 a.m. If anyone can join, please do. We've got some special guests. Rich Robinson, who's the 2020 NAHB membership chair, will be on the call. Isabel Shockett, who's the director of membership growth and development, and Reagan Van Cleve. So we will be talking membership, retention, what we can do to get through this difficult time, and hopefully your participation will be helpful. I won't spend time on this. Take a look at it. These were the council membership goals. You can kind of see pretty much every council down. Future industry leaders and 55 plus actually up above goal. So the rest have some work to do for the rest of the year. So let's skip on that quickly. And then our membership goal as a number. So at the end of the year, our goal is to hit 1,060 members. Currently, as I mentioned, we're at 1021, so we need to increase by 39 members. Obviously, that means not decreasing, which is going to be a struggle because we are going to have some more terminations. So we'll continue to monitor this. We did, hopefully everyone's been noticing some of the new marketing going out, a big focus on our money saving programs. We've had a bunch of webinars, great participation. Just to give a few highlights, we did a webinar for the member rebate program in late April. We actually had 12 new builders and remodelers sign up for the program to participate, which is awesome. We do get some money back from that. So any member that participates, not only are they saving money, but they're helping the association as well. Health insurance program, we'll get into it in a second. National purchasing partners, we just had a webinar a few weeks ago, and we did get 17 new members to participate in that program, which is awesome. And of course, the dealerships have been doing really, really good. Nissan, GMC, but particularly Nissan, and we have had 14 members join just to participate in this program, and it's pretty awesome. So health insurance, I'm going to introduce in a second both Mark Kaufman and Peter Cole from the Warner companies who we've partnered with. You've probably seen a ton of information on this, especially in March, April, and early May. We had a few webinars. I'm happy to say that the results thus far have been awesome, far surpassing my expectations. Very exciting stuff. I don't want to take too much from them, but I will highlight a few numbers. To date, we've had 24 members that have been quoted. So they've reached out, filled out their census information, and requested quotes on various different insurance programs. Of those, 9 are pending, and 1 has officially signed up. The average has been about 24% savings, and that's for all of the members with either better or similar coverage, but really, really, really impactful savings for everyone. And then there's 3 companies, we didn't put company names on here, but we did have a law firm who's looking to participate with 46 employees, pretty similar coverage, and they'll be saving annually $110,000. So that's huge. On a smaller scale, we had a remodeler with 14 employees. And again, their coverage was the exact same, and they'll be saving $16,000 annually. So another, for a smaller company, that's huge, especially during difficult times. But a larger company that does paving had 77 employees. You can see there it's 251,000 savings. So not only is there a benefit for our members, but I'll put this up again from last board meeting. There's a benefit to the association as well, and that's why we're pushing it so hard, because we do get a commission, and we're hoping to get up to that 10 million in premiums, so we can get between $50,000 and $65,000 for the association annually. And that will be newfound revenue. So huge, especially after seeing the budget that Lauren was just presenting. And Mark, Peter, sorry, I probably stole a lot from you, but I'm going to turn it over to you guys for a few minutes just to chat about the program. Mark, you just got to hit the unmute button.
There we go.
There you go. Yep.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I see Cindy smiling. Thank you for, want to first and foremost thank Chris, and thanks to Lori and the entire board at NBIA. We are thrilled for the opportunity to not only speak to you today, but just rolling this program rolling it out has been a pleasure for us as an organization, dealing with so many nice people that are reaching out to us through our technology and through our billing administrator, dropping their census into the files. And we're getting back to people typically within 48 hours. So we have a lot of business pending, very excited again about the opportunity. And I would think that, we're gonna hit this $10 million of premium goal. But our goal is 50 million as an organization working through NBIA. So the numbers do get significant in the healthcare space. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Peter Cole, just to speak for a few minutes. And Chris, could you also, Rob Dooley is on the line. So could you unmute him as well? Great. Thank you. Peter?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I just want to say a couple of words about this. Chris had mentioned that he was really impressed with the level of enthusiasm and the results of the program so far. And to be perfectly honest, that's really all due to Chris and Lori and the team at NBIA. They've done really an amazing job of helping us and supporting us in promoting the program. We've been lucky enough here in the employee benefit business in general to not be as impacted as other industries as a result of the COVID virus. We also have been lucky in that we've been able to use technology to reach out to new clients, to new customers, to work with our current book of business, so that we really haven't missed a beat in terms of being able to do the job that we do to help companies establish and manage cost-effective employee benefit programs. At this point, I do want to throw out an ask, and that is to ask every board member who is on this webinar to set aside 15 or 20 minutes, and we'll reach out to you, but set aside 15 or 20 minutes for a Zoom meeting where we can introduce our services, about what we do, learn a little bit about what your challenges are, and kind of walk you through how the program works, and give you a little bit of a demonstration on how much money we might be able to save for your organization. Because as Chris mentioned, we're looking at 24% savings on average. And it's because of the products that we have, the creative solutions that we have, and some of the things that Rob Dooley does with his group. And I'm going to ask him to be very brief, but to explain a little bit about some of the smaller groups that he works with and the kind of savings that he might be able to achieve.
So thanks. The small groups have really shown a lot of interest. They're looking to save money. And one of the new things that are out there is the ability to give your employees money and let them go buy the health plan that they want on their own. And we found some options from Blue Cross Blue Shield where the rates are actually lower on the individual market than on the group market, which you would not think is true. And the big advantage is there's no participation requirement. So you don't have to get 50% of everybody to join in order to have a group plan. So those are some real advantages. The one that we've written has been on renewal. So I think as the renewals come up, we're going to start writing more business. And I do believe we're going to see some rate increases because of the COVID. There has been a spike of claims, as you know, from COVID, and that usually gets passed along to the consumer in higher premiums. So our savings will then be more significant for people. Thanks.
If I could, this is Mark Kaufman. If I could add just one thing quickly, in the healthcare business, the dirty little secret, I'll say, is for many brokers out there, they wait until the last minute to deliver the renewal to their clients. As an organization, we deliver our renewals 60 days in advance to the folks that we work with, giving people options and alternatives to drive down healthcare costs. Don't fall into the trap that a lot of brokers out there utilize, which is waiting till the last minute, 30 days to get something in front of you, and then you feel like you're boxed in. So we would suggest if you could send us your census data through the portal, through MBIA, if you could send it to us 75 days in advance, we can turn things around quickly, and then you're making an educated decision whether you want to utilize our services or stay with your incumbent broker. With that being said, I want to thank everyone, and I'm going to turn it back over to Chris and Lori.
And if I could just jump in here for 1 second for the last word on this, to show our appreciation for all of the support that MBIA has given us in this, I'm going to ask Mark Kaufman to assign himself the goal of bringing in 2 new members for your organization.
Where is Peter so I can see his face? I'll take care of it, buddy. No worries.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Well, thanks. We really appreciate that, Mark. Thanks for the membership report, Chris and Cindy. And we are on to Builder Mart, which is a huge deal for the organization. Is Joe on, or are you handling this, Chris?
Well, I think, Jude, I was just going to make a couple of remarks, and then if anyone wants to chime in, they can, but I don't think that we need to spend a ton of time on this right this second. But obviously, this is something that, as you could see from our financials, is a huge deal for us. We generally net, over $200,000 on this. It's our biggest event that we do, and having it postponed till September, we will have to see how it kind of plays out as far as the regulations, and the State Fairgrounds is right now a COVID testing site, so that could play into this as well. So we're keeping an eye on it. We're coming up with a plan A and a plan B, and our Builder Mart committee will be meeting towards the end of the month to review those plans. Plan A being we can have it obviously looks very different, and plan B is probably a different scenario. So we're working on it. As I mentioned, when we did the financials, we collected $190,000. We do have some liability on this, so we are trying to figure out the best way moving forward. So does Joe or Chris or anybody have anything they want to add?
No, I think that pretty much covered it, Laurie. We're just, as you know, at the mercy of kind of the state and kind of what the gathering numbers look like. And, we've got some good ideas floating around already between Carrie and Chris and myself and some of the rest of the committee as to how we can kind of do this in a different fashion.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, obviously I'm closely monitoring the situation through the executive orders. The executive order yesterday did not change anything on the gatherings. And the last executive order that was last week kept everything at 10 and specifically mentioned, parades and fundraisers and conventions, and I think Builder Mart would fall into that category. Would not be happening until the state of emergency is lifted, as well as the pandemic is kind of lifted as well. So we don't know when that's going to happen, so we're keeping a close eye on that.
Okay, thanks very much. I don't think Marty's on the call either. So Lori, want to continue with NAHB, please?
Yeah, so Marty actually is at an NAHB or an NAHB Zoom meeting. They're doing their board meetings this week and next week. Normally it's in DC. This year they're doing it virtually. If you have any interest in any of that, please let me know. We can certainly get you connected on the NAHB stuff, but that's the biggest thing going on right now. The other big thing that they're looking at is, and we've mentioned this in the past, is the 2020 codes are getting adopted, and the energy code is not particularly favorable to our industry. So NAHB has really been working on that piece of it, and so we will keep everybody posted as we learn more.
Thanks, Lori. And MBA PAC, I don't see Frank on here either. I think we're back to you, Lori.
Yeah, sorry. We have about $303,000 in our PACs right now, so that's kind of where we are. If you're interested in any particular PAC, it's in the financials under the cash flow spreadsheet. So that's it.
Thanks very much. And Home Builders Care, John DeZino is on injured reserve. Wish him speedy recovery from his knee accident. And so we're over to Steve Rubin for Home Builders Care Foundation. Steve, are you out there?
Jude, I don't see him. Patty, I know Patty's on. Patty, do you want to give a quick?
Sure. Sorry. So a lot of our projects are on hold right now for Home Builders Care, basically due to what everybody else is dealing with now, the COVID restrictions. Some of our projects are categorized as the same as some of the senior facilities, so that's kind of why it's really hard to get in. But our big news is that our Home Builders Care Bowl and Oyster Roast, which we do every summer, is going virtual this year. Rich Thomas is our honoree. He will be presented with our Robert L. Mitchell Founders Award. We're very excited about that. And Rich has kind of put a twist on things. There's a quote that you guys can see right there. He feels his role is different this year, and he wants to shift the focus a little bit and share the spotlight with a lot of other folks who are also giving back and demonstrating that Home Builders Care. So we're in the process of reaching out to a handful of friends of Rich's who have a history of giving back, and we're going to put together a series of videos and emails and social media posts and a bunch of stuff to get the word out that homeowners do care. A lot of these videos will have legs, and we can use them for advocacy issues in many parts of the state. And of course, our goal is to basically raise awareness and funds for the foundation. We've set a goal of about $50,000 to do this year, which is what our bull roast would have netted if we had done it. So look for some information on that coming soon.
All right, thanks very much, Patty. On to BDGG with Scott. I think I see him on here.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Scott.
Hey, how you doing? In terms of the BDGG, in spite of what I consider to be the surprisingly stable new home sales environment, and we're seeing this just anecdotally across the board from tract builders as well as some of our upper end builders. The permit issuance requests are down still. And for the first time in my memory, the BDG Montgomery County entity actually showed a loss for the month. We've got plenty of reserves, and I think that was probably triggered by a catch up on the management fee payments. But the Montgomery County group did show a loss for the month. The Southern Maryland group showed a profit, and does one for the year to date. So, that's about what I have to report. I did receive an inquiry a little while back from Lisa Goheen and Lori about the possibility of doing some type of, video introduction or video piece that would be shared with the membership. And, initially I was kind of buried under the PPP application process, but things have slowed in that respect recently. So I'll reach out to them about starting that idea up again.
Thanks, Scott. And just want to put out a recommendation there for BDGG. Speaking from personal experience here at Elm Street, if you're a builder or developer out there in need of bonding and you're not already using BDGG and you're in one of the areas it serves, please look into it. It's a great program. On to the association report. Lori.
Great, thank you. So I know time is short, so I'm going to be relatively quick, but please feel free to raise your hand or put any questions you have in the chat function. As you know, and I mentioned this earlier, we are at a standstill for events. So we're trying to kind of reinvent ourselves a little bit, at least for the short term, and figure out different ways that we can have our members connect with each other and give them resources for their business. So obviously we've been following pretty closely the roadmap to recovery, which I touched on as well earlier. You know that we're in phase 2 of the reopening. The governor came out yesterday and opened some more things, some indoor rec dining and some other things. I believe at this point, most of our industry is taken care of. The model homes were a question mark, but now I think we're in good shape with all of those things. Our biggest thing now is the large gatherings. So that's something that we're keeping an eye on, of when we'll be able to do in-person meetings and in-person events. I also believe that there's a difference between being able to do an event and not being and wanting to do an event. I think Carrie was going to put a poll up, I believe. I'll let her figure that out, but I think we were going to do a poll. Oh, yep, here it is. When will you be ready to attend a networking event in person? So again, I think there's a difference between being able to have an event and when people feel comfortable with it. So if everybody could take a minute to do the poll, so we can kind of just get a feel. We put this in BNN this morning to kind of get a feel for it, see what people thought. So I'll give everybody a second to vote, see what people think. I think everybody's got a different philosophy on it, so give everybody just another minute or so. It looks like almost everybody's voted. Okay, so with 70% in of everybody on the phone, September wins with 33%. 2021's 19, July is 22%, August is tied with 2021 of 19, and then we had 7% say right now. So interesting. So we'll keep an eye on it. Obviously, it just really depends on what the state does as far as those regulations. We will be doing, as far as meetings, all of our meetings will be virtual through August. We've kind of made that decision. Just it's the summer and we don't have a lot of events anyway or meetings anyway, so we will be doing that. We are working on several other events. We have the webinar, which you heard about in the apprenticeship program. We also are doing a CAPS course next week, Certified Aging in Place, which will be on Zoom as well. We have converted 2 of our events that we had that were postponed. Our Montgomery County breakfast and our Prince George's County breakfast will be virtual. We've been able to work with the county executive from both jurisdictions to try to put those events on. So our Montgomery County it will be a forum due to timing of that they can do it on June 19th. And the Prince George's Forum is going to be June 26th. So if you do a lot of business in those jurisdictions, I think it's a good opportunity. The county executive, the county council presidents will be on, and we'll be giving away the awards that we normally do, that type of thing. So I think that those will be good events to attend. We're also doing a happy hour for our 55 plus council on June 25th. And then we're also looking in July, we're looking at a couple other webinars. We're looking at doing a future industry leaders event towards the end of the month, and trying to figure out some other fun ways that we can engage our members in this kind of crazy time until we can be in person again, I think. We're also working on finalizing and figuring out what we're going to do for Max Awards, which was another large event that we had to postpone. So we are working on that as well. We will be focusing here shortly on the fall and what the fall looks like. Again, I think there's a difference between when we'll be able to do events, when people will feel comfortable doing events, and what we'll be able to do as far as space and limitations. And we also know, just based on all the other stuff that's kind of come out, is that, you know, opening is one thing, but opening, you have a lot of restrictions. So we have to figure out what that kind of looks like for our events moving forward. Obviously, buffets and those types of things are probably not going to be happening for quite some time. So those are a lot of things that we're working on and we're looking at, and trying to figure out what the best way is for us to kind of move forward. We also are continuing to do our weekly raffle. So if you haven't gotten a ticket yet, we do still have some tickets available. It's been a lot of fun. I've done it for my house every Monday morning. We have given away various prizes. We did an iRobot vacuum cleaner. We did several different kinds of noise canceling headphones. We did AirPods. We've done a lot of other fun prizes, and it supports our advocacy efforts, because even in this crazy time when we're very, very focused on just getting MBIA operations through this time, we still are trying to make sure that we're advocating and doing the best thing we can for our industry moving forward. And I was excited to hear some of Peter Franchio's remarks. I do think that he could be a good partner. I've heard him speak a couple of times now. He is very business friendly and very business oriented. So I think I do believe he's running for governor. I liked how he couched that, but I do believe he's running for governor. But I think that he could be a good partner with us in trying to change some of the attitudes out there. So we'll continue to kind of work on that as we move forward. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay.
Thanks, Lori. And on to the state legislative update. And while you're talking about this, can you also mention, or I can jump back in and mention that letter to the title insurance industry from the insurance commissioner today?
Yeah, you go ahead and you can start with that. I actually, since we've been on the phone today, I've gotten 2 more emails about it. So do you want to go ahead and mention that, and then I'll kind of talk about the other stuff that we're working on?
Sure. Just so everybody knows, the letter was dated June 9th, I think, and just hit the street yesterday. It's a brand new insurance commissioner in Maryland who we don't have a long track record with, although she's been involved in the industry for a while. But basically, the letter tells all the builders and title companies that they can't offer closing cost assistance as a way of inducing a home buyer to use a specific title insurer, which is a huge deal for all our builders and members. So we've just gotten that. We haven't formulated a strategy about how to respond yet, but we're going to be doing that. And knowing that we have title attorneys on the board and listening to this call, I hope we're going to involve that section of our membership in responding to the insurance commissioner.
Jude, this is Hillary. What reason did they give?
We will send that letter around. It wasn't real detail. It just said you can't do it, I think.
It was basically a 1 page plus a little bit. Hillary, we'll distribute it out. I just found out about it from Jude this morning, and like I said, since I've been on this meeting, I've gotten a couple other emails about it. So, and then I have talked to Bob and I don't think he's could make it on the call today, but our lobbyist, he actually does have a relationship with her. So I think we should be able to get a meeting. I think that's our first strategy. So we might be reaching out to some people to see if we could set up, but it'll probably have to be a Zoom call at this point, and see if we can set something up and have some of our members involved in that.
Thanks. So I'll flip it back to you for anything else on the state legislative update.
Yeah, Hillary, did you have anything you wanted to say?
I don't.
Okay. So obviously we've been very focused on the state level on the essential employee type of thing, and we've really been focusing on that. So right now, I did talk to Bob, our lobbyist, this morning, and we're going to start to focus on session here shortly. We have to kind of double back our efforts. He believes there's going to be a lot of legislation about trying to figure out how to prevent this from happening again, which may or may not be something that's good for businesses. So we're working on that type of thing as we move forward, but that's our big focus. We'll probably start having legislative committee. My intention was to have monthly legislative committee meetings during the interim. Obviously, we got a little bit sidetracked here, but we will start those up again probably in July, and try to get some legislators in to talk to them. I'd like to start building some relationships with Will Smith in particular, who's the new chair of JPR, and we haven't had a relationship with him much in the past just because we haven't had to. So I think that would be some value. And there's some other legislators I think that we want to try to meet with. I just got a question, when are they going to start session? So there had been a lot of talk about a special session. I, at this point, don't think that's going to happen. If we hear anything, we'll let you know. But right this second, I don't believe there's going to be a special session. I think it's not a good look for the legislators to come back during this pandemic and try to pass any kind of funding bill for Kerwin or anything like that. So I think it's in everybody's best interest. I've talked to a couple of legislators that behind closed doors would tell you they would like to just see everything calm down before they go back in, which would mean they would wait till January, and they start the second week in January. So we'll keep an eye on that, but at this point doesn't look like it. They have had some briefings, and they have another one on the 23rd. Most of those have been dealing with COVID. They've had some dealing with health insurance and other things. They have had, this will be the third one, dealing with landlord-tenant issues. So we've been monitoring those. Not a priority issue for us, but it is an issue nonetheless. So we've been involved in those briefings and monitoring the situation. But there's a lot of talk about how we deal with that long term as people start having to pay their rent and those types of things. So we'll be monitoring those as we move forward. But that's kind of where we are. You'll remember, and the comptroller mentioned this, they passed the $4 billion a year education bill last session. So the big question mark now is going to be how do they continue with that when there's such a budget deficit and they can't really afford it, quite honestly. So that's where we are. Does anybody have any other questions about state stuff?
All right, thanks very much, Lori and Hillary. On to other items. It's 4:45. I don't know if we want to do a roll call down every chapter and committee. So if any chapter committee chair has something they want to bring up for the whole board, please do the raise your hand function. And otherwise, anybody else with any other items or new business to bring up, also please hit the raise your hand function, and our tremendous behind the scenes staff will call on you.
Doesn't seem to, sorry, go ahead. Anyway, somebody? Silky's raised her hand. Silky? Silky, are you there? See, she has her hand raised.
It's not like school where you raise your hand hoping the teacher's not going to call on you. Silky, you got to say something.
So, Silky, I'm going to hit this merge with audio because it looks like I'm not able to unmute you. So I hope something crazy doesn't happen, but let's try this. Merge, yeah, okay. Silky, what number are you on? The 240 or the 302? Oh, she can't tell me.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's that trick with the phone, because I'm on my phone, where you have to press *6 to unmute. Sorry about that. No, I just wanted to let folks know that there's a few things going on in Montgomery County. We have the SSP, which has a lot of attention from the builders and developers doing work in Montgomery, and there's planning board hearing tonight on that. Griffin has been helping the industry compile our comments, both on the school capacity and transportation capacity side. So I think we're in good shape to testify on that. We've already submitted written testimony. And then Hans Riemer, we've had conversations with him about submitting permit extension legislation, which I haven't had a chance to look at. It looks like there's a draft that's been circulating this week. So there's a call set on next week to talk about that. And then hopefully that'll, hopefully we'll be able to work at least with the council. We haven't had much success with talking with the executive about extensions. So I just wanted to mention those two things so people were aware.
Thanks, Silky. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? All right, well, we'll wrap it up then. Thank you to everybody for your attendance and sticking around till the end of the meeting. Whether you're on the board or you're just here to listen to the comptroller, all members are always welcome at every board meeting, and we appreciate your attendance. If you got nothing else out of this, at least you got the cell phone number for the comptroller of the state of Maryland, and you can put that to good use in the future. Appreciate your work on behalf of the association, and let us know how we can keep helping your business. So thanks very much, and we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jude.
Thanks,
And
Jude.
thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Lori, for all the production work on this.
Good meeting, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. See y'all soon.